I've been a property inspector for 15 years. I've seen it all: rotting floorboards, black mold creeping up walls, abandoned houses with squatters still inside. Nothing shocks me anymore, or so I thought. But there's one house I'll never forget, and if you value your sanity, you'll heed my warning: if you ever see it, don't go in. It started on a dreary Tuesday morning. I was reviewing my assignments for the day when an urgent request came in. The client was a real estate company, looking to flip an old Victorian house on the outskirts of town. They said it had been abandoned for decades but was in surprisingly good shape. Potential gold mine, they called it. They wanted a detailed inspection done ASAP. The address seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it. When I mentioned it to my colleague, his face went pale. "You're going to that place?" he muttered. I asked him what he meant, but he just shook his head and walked away. That should have been my first clue. The house stood at the end of a long, cracked driveway, hidden behind a curtain of overgrown trees. It looked like something out of a Gothic horror novel, tall, with intricate woodwork and windows that seemed to stare at you like eyes. The air felt heavier as I approached, and I noticed an unsettling silence. No birds. No wind. Just stillness. I pulled out my clipboard and walked to the front door. The brass knocker was ice cold, even in the summer heat. As I knocked, the door creaked open on its own. I called out, "Hello. Anyone here?" But my voice felt swallowed by the oppressive quiet. The inside was pristine, almost unnervingly so. No dust, no cobwebs, no signs of decay. The furniture was old but perfectly arranged, as if someone had just left and planned to return at any moment. A grandfather clock ticked softly in the corner, though its hands were stuck at 3:33. I should have walked out right then. But I didn't. As I moved through the house, a strange feeling washed over me, like I was being watched. It wasn't just paranoia. I knew something was there, just out of sight. The first floor was oddly unremarkable, but when I reached the staircase, I hesitated. There was a faint noise, almost like footsteps above me. I rationalized it: it's an old house, probably creaking wood. But the sound didn't stop, it grew louder, moving closer to the top of the stairs. Still, I climbed. The second floor was darker, colder. The air felt wrong, like it didn't belong in this world. Each room I entered was the same, immaculately kept, yet devoid of life. But then I opened the door at the end of the hall. Inside was a child's bedroom, untouched by time. Toys were scattered on the floor, and a dollhouse sat on a table by the window. The sight made my stomach churn. Something about the room felt off, like it didn't belong in this house, or this time. Then I saw it. On the bed lay a small photo album. The pictures inside were of a family, parents and 2 children, smiling and happy. But as I flipped through, the photos changed. The smiles turned to expressions of fear. The family's faces grew gaunt, their eyes hollow. The final picture was of the house itself, taken from the driveway. And standing in the window, staring directly at the camera, was a figure. Its face was smudged and distorted, but its eyes, they were black, empty voids. I slammed the album shut, my heart pounding. That's when I noticed the dollhouse. It wasn't just a dollhouse, it was this house, an exact replica. But it wasn't empty. Tiny figurines stood in the rooms, perfectly placed. There was one in the kitchen, one in the living room, and one at the top of the stairs. I glanced toward the hallway. The footsteps had stopped. I don't know what possessed me to keep going, but I couldn't leave. Something pulled me toward the attic door. It was slightly ajar, a dim light spilling out from the crack. The stairs creaked as I ascended, each step heavier than the last. The attic was bare except for a single chair in the center of the room. On it sat a woman, her back to me. "Ma'am," I called, my voice trembling. She didn't respond. I took a step closer. "I'm here to inspect the property." "Are you?" She turned, and I froze. Her face was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were black pits that seemed to pull the light out of the room. Her mouth twisted into a smile that didn't belong on a human face. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered, her voice echoing unnaturally. Suddenly, the room shifted. The walls pulsed, the air thickened, and a deafening noise filled my ears, a mix of whispers, screams, and laughter. I stumbled back, desperate to escape, but the stairs were gone. The attic stretched endlessly, the walls closing in. I don't remember how I got out. One moment I was trapped, the next I was outside, gasping for air. The house stood as still and silent as before, mocking me. My car wouldn't start, so I ran until my legs gave out. When I reported the house to the real estate company, they looked at me like I was insane. "We've never had a property at that address," they said. I went back to check, but the house was gone. The driveway was there, cracked and overgrown, but the house, it was as if it had never existed. I've tried to forget, but the nightmares won't let me. I still hear the whispers, still see those black eyes every time I close mine. And sometimes, when I drive past that stretch of road, I swear I see it, the house, standing there, waiting for its next victim. So if you're a property inspector and you see this house, don't go in. Don't stop. Don't even look. Because once it notices you, it never lets you go. After that day, I tried to put the incident behind me. But the house wouldn't let me. It began subtly. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of footsteps, faint but deliberate, pacing outside my bedroom door. The first few times, I thought it was my mind playing tricks on me. But one night, I woke to find my bedroom door ajar, though I always locked it before bed. Then there were the shadows. They started appearing in my periphery, dark figures that seemed to linger just out of reach. At the office, at home, even in broad daylight. They weren't normal shadows. They moved against the light, bending and twisting in ways that defied logic. Once, I saw one stretch across my living room wall, and when I turned to look, it darted toward me like a predator. I stopped sleeping. I stopped going to work. I couldn't shake the feeling that something from that house had followed me, and it was growing bolder. One evening, I received a call from an unknown number. My gut told me not to answer, but I was desperate for answers. "Hello." A long pause. Then, faintly, a voice whispered, "You left too soon." My blood ran cold. It was her voice, the woman from the attic. The line went dead, but my phone began to buzz again. This time, it wasn't a call. It was a video notification, sent directly to my phone with no source. My hands trembled as I opened it. The screen showed footage of the house, filmed from the driveway. The video zoomed in slowly, focusing on the front door, which creaked open. The camera moved inside, panning through the eerily pristine rooms I had inspected. And then it stopped in the attic. The same chair was there, empty now. But as the camera lingered, the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps echoed, coming closer. The screen began to glitch, static crackling as the footsteps grew louder. Then, in a flash of distorted pixels, the woman appeared, her face inches from the camera. "You'll come back," she whispered. "They always do." The screen went black. That night, I barricaded myself in my room, but it didn't matter. The house found a way in. I woke up to the sound of my closet door creaking open. I hadn't used that closet in years, it was empty, I was sure of it. But as I stared into the darkness, I saw movement. A pale hand emerged, gripping the edge of the doorframe, followed by a face that didn't belong to this world. It was her. Her head tilted unnaturally as she stepped forward, her eyes fixed on mine. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. She reached out, her fingers impossibly long and skeletal. "Come back," she said, her voice reverberating inside my skull. And then, in an instant, she was gone. The next morning, I found muddy footprints leading from my closet to my bed. I became obsessed, determined to understand what was happening. I scoured old records, library archives, anything I could find about the house. What I discovered chilled me to the core. The house had a history of disappearances. Property inspectors, real estate agents, even thrill seekers, all had gone missing after entering. Witnesses reported strange occurrences, phantom lights in the windows, screams echoing from inside, and, most disturbingly, a woman's silhouette in the attic window. The oldest record I found was from 1897, detailing the original owner, a reclusive widow named Eleanor Grace. Locals had called her a witch, accusing her of dark rituals. After her children disappeared, she was found in the attic, sitting in a chair, her eyes blackened and her mouth twisted into an unnatural smile. I tried to destroy the journal I'd found at the house, thinking it might sever the connection. But when I threw it into my fireplace, the flames turned cold. The room darkened, and for a moment, I swore I heard laughter, soft, echoing, and unmistakably hers. I knew then that the house wasn't just haunted. It was alive, feeding on those who dared to enter, binding them to its will. Now, I'm writing this as a warning. The house hasn't stopped tormenting me. It appears in my dreams, pulling me back into its dark halls. The woman, Eleanor, or whatever she's become, calls to me, her whispers growing louder each day. And sometimes, late at night, I see it, the house, standing where it shouldn't be. On my street. In my backyard. Watching. I know my time is running out. The house wants me to return, and I don't think I can resist much longer. If you're a property inspector and you see this house, don't go in. Don't even look at it. Because once it notices you, it's already too late. I thought I could forget the house. I really did. But it wouldn't let me. It didn't need me to return. It came to me. It began with the mirrors. One morning, I noticed something strange in the bathroom mirror while brushing my teeth. The reflection seemed delayed, like it wasn't keeping up with my movements. I waved my hand experimentally, and the reflection followed, but just a fraction too late. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make my skin crawl. Then, as I leaned closer to inspect my reflection, I saw something else. In the background of the mirror, the faint outline of a doorway. It was arched, with peeling wood and intricate carvings. I spun around, but there was nothing there, just the plain bathroom wall. Yet in the mirror, it remained. Later that week, my laptop started acting up. At first, I thought it was a virus. Random windows would open and close, the screen flickering like it was glitching. But then I noticed the content. The browser kept pulling up images of the house. Old, black and white photographs of its exterior. Floor plans. Newspaper clippings about disappearances. Each time, I'd close the window, only for another to pop up, each image more detailed than the last. One night, as I tried to shut the laptop down for good, a video played on its own. It showed the house's attic, dimly lit by a single, swaying bulb. In the center of the frame was the chair, empty at first. But as the video continued, a figure slowly came into focus. It was her. She didn't move, didn't speak, but her eyes bore into me through the screen, dark and infinite. Suddenly, she stood. The camera zoomed in, closing the distance between us in a sickening, jerky motion. Her hand reached toward the screen, and just before it went black, I swear I heard her whisper. "You're already inside." The mirrors got worse after that. One evening, I caught something moving in my bedroom mirror, a faint shadow darting across the glass. I thought it was a trick of the light, but as I approached, I saw it again. This time, it wasn't a shadow. It was a room. Not my room. It was the house's living room, with its ornate furniture and spotless decor. I leaned in closer, unable to look away. The room was empty at first, but then a figure appeared at the edge of the frame. She moved unnaturally, her limbs jerking as if they didn't belong to her body. She stepped closer to the mirror, her face slowly coming into view. Her black eyes locked onto mine, and she smiled, a grotesque, stretched grin that made my stomach churn. I stumbled back, knocking over a lamp. When I looked again, the reflection was normal. But the chill in the room remained. I started covering all the mirrors in my house, taping towels and blankets over them. But it didn't help. The reflection wasn't confined to mirrors anymore. I began to see glimpses of the house in other reflective surfaces, windows, polished tables, even puddles of water. One night, I caught a glimpse of the staircase in a puddle outside my house. The tiny, distorted reflection showed the stairs leading up to the attic, and on the top step stood a pale figure. She waved. The final straw came when I received a package. No return address, no explanation. Just a plain, unmarked box. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Inside was the photo album. The same one I'd seen in the child's bedroom. I didn't want to touch it, but I couldn't stop myself. As I flipped through the pages, I realized the photos had changed again. The smiling family was gone. Now, the pictures showed me. There I was, standing in my office, walking down my street, sitting at my desk. Each image was impossibly detailed, taken from angles that shouldn't have been possible. The final photo was of my living room. It showed me sitting on the couch, holding the photo album. But in the background, just behind me, was a doorway. The same arched doorway I'd seen in the mirror. I looked up, my heart pounding. The doorway wasn't there. But as I stared at the spot where it should have been, the air began to shimmer, like heat rising off asphalt. Slowly, the outline of the door began to take shape, solidifying with each passing second. I don't know what's real anymore. The house isn't just a place, it's a parasite, a malignant force that latches onto anyone unlucky enough to stumble into its orbit. And now, it's here. I can feel its presence, pressing in on me, distorting my home into something that isn't mine anymore. The rooms stretch and twist when I'm not looking. The air carries the faint scent of decay, and every now and then, I hear the sound of footsteps above me. I know she's waiting for me to open that door. But I won't. If you're reading this, heed my warning. If you're a property inspector and you see this house, if it appears on your list, in your reflections, or even in your dreams, don't go in. Because once the house knows you, it will never let you go. And sooner or later, you'll find yourself standing in front of that arched doorway, unable to resist the pull. I'm writing this now because I don't think I have much time left. The doorway is knocking. I didn't answer the knocking. Not at first. I told myself I wouldn't give in, that I wouldn't acknowledge it. But the house had other plans. The knocking didn't stop. It grew louder, more insistent, echoing through my home. It wasn't a human knock, there was no rhythm to it. Instead, it was erratic, frantic, like something clawing to get through. And then it began to speak. The voice was hers, soft, melodic, almost soothing if you didn't listen too closely. But her words were wrong. They slithered into my mind, planting doubts, whispering things I didn't want to believe. "You've always belonged here," she said. "You were never meant to leave." I covered my ears, but the voice wasn't coming from outside the door anymore. It was inside my head, crawling through my thoughts like a parasite. Desperate, I decided to leave my house. I grabbed my car keys and bolted for the door, but as I stepped outside, my surroundings blurred. The street wasn't my street anymore. The world had shifted. I was back at the house. It loomed before me, impossibly tall, its windows glowing faintly like watching eyes. The air was thick and heavy, making it hard to breathe. The front door was open, creaking softly as if inviting me inside. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Instead, I was pulled forward, step by agonizing step, until I was standing in the doorway. The interior was just as I remembered, eerily pristine, untouched by time. But something was different. The house was alive now, pulsating with a sickening rhythm. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting like lungs. Shadows darted across the floor, pooling in corners and stretching toward me. And then I heard her laughter, soft and echoing, coming from the attic. Against every instinct, I climbed the stairs. I don't know why, I couldn't stop myself. My legs moved on their own, carrying me upward as the laughter grew louder. The attic door was open, revealing the same dimly lit room I'd seen before. The chair sat in the center, but this time, it wasn't empty. She was there, facing away from me, her head tilted unnaturally to one side. As I stepped closer, the floorboards creaked under my weight. She didn't move, but I could feel her awareness, her presence wrapping around me like a cold fog. "You came back," she said, her voice a mix of triumph and malice. I didn't respond. My mouth was dry, my body frozen in place. She turned slowly, her movements jerky, like a marionette controlled by unseen strings. Her face was wrong, stretched and distorted, her eyes bottomless pits that seemed to pull at my very soul. "This is your home now," she said, extending a hand toward me. I don't know what compelled me to do it, but I reached for the photo album in my bag. I had brought it with me, though I didn't remember packing it. Desperation took over as I hurled it onto the chair, the pages flipping wildly. The room erupted in chaos. The walls shook violently, cracks splintering through the floor as an inhuman scream filled the attic. The woman, or whatever she was, jerked backward, her form flickering like static. Shadows poured from her, writhing and thrashing as they were sucked into the photo album. "No!" she shrieked, her voice splitting into multiple tones. "You can't leave. But the house was breaking apart. The pristine walls peeled away, revealing rotted wood and gaping voids beneath. The chair splintered into pieces, and the woman dissolved into a swirling mass of darkness that was swallowed by the album. I woke up on my living room floor, the photo album sitting beside me. It was charred, the pages blackened and brittle. I didn't dare touch it. I called a friend to take it away, to burn it or bury it far from me. I didn't care what happened to it as long as it was gone. For a while, things were quiet. The mirrors stopped showing me things that weren't there. The shadows disappeared. The house, I hoped, had finally let me go. But some nights, when the world is silent and I'm alone, I hear it. A faint knock. And her voice, whispering through the cracks in my mind. You'll come back. They always do. If you ever see that house, if you ever feel its pull, remember my story. Remember what it can do. And for the love of everything, don't go in.